Welcome to the Easier Way to Sell presentation of Close the Deal Without Selling. Here's your host and developer of the Easier Way to Sell, Evans Kerrigan.
Welcome to this video edition of the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast. This is our 50th episode, and I am understandably jazzed. I'm sending out my heartfelt thanks to everyone that's helped me in the production of the podcast, and of course, most of all, to you. Your support has been most gratifying, and I trust the information has been useful. Help me get the word out about the podcast, okay? Now, what are we going to cover in this episode? In the first segment, we'll cover my latest suggestion for you, which is participate in the Pink Elephant Project. And you're about to see what that's all about. And when you listen to the full audio version of the podcast, you'll hear even more details regarding the project, as well as some additional project exercises. Now, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. And here's what to expect starting with episode 1. The Close the Deal Without Selling podcast was designed to provide an easier way to sell for people who get frustrated when their appointments don't turn into a sale or a contract as often as they believe they should. The information you get from these podcast episodes will help you get rid of that sales frustration and stress and turn your contacts into contracts more easily and more often. Now, in our guest conversation, we have Brett Cooper and Evans Kerrigan. They are the authors of Solving the People Problem, Essential Skills You Need to Lead and Succeed in Today's Workplace. These guys are experts on emotional intelligence. So listen and find out how the discovery of your personality style can help you raise your EQ and your sales productivity. Now, get ready to find out about the Pink Elephant Project. Welcome to the Pink Elephant Project. Now, for the next 6 seconds, what I want you to do is don't think of a pink elephant. You see, whatever follows a negative command cannot not be followed. And you and I both know this all started with Eve and don't eat the apple. So avoid negative commands like don't delay, don't look down, don't be nervous, don't go in the street, and replace them with positive commands. Positive commands like, well, act now, stay on the sidewalk, be on time, remain calm. And here's your assignment. Use positive commands for 1 week. Keep a log of your progress. And 3, do the same thing next week. Here's a helpful way to remember. Each and every time you use a negative command, this is what you'll experience. In your head, you'll hear a squeak toy. Now avoid the squeak and state your commands in the positive. Avoid negative commands. Visit us at closethedealwithoutselling.com and learn more. Visit our website and get your free preview of the Close the Deal Without Selling Action Guide and Teaching Manual. Check out this easier way to learn the easier way to sell. Visit us at closethedealwithoutselling.com or sellandmarketbetter.com. I'm going to refer to my notes for a minute so I can say this exactly the way they paid me to say it. A couple of episodes ago, I shared my take on emotional intelligence, which was my dabble at that. And I got notes from many of you saying, I want more, I want more. So I've got a treat for you today. Brett Cooper and Evans Kerrigan are here to discuss their book, and I want to read it exactly right. The People Problem, Essential Skills You Need to Lead and Succeed in Today's Workplace. No one needs that. Why would anybody even care about how to be a good leader or how to make your business and your office run effectively? I know yours is running perfectly, isn't it? So we're going to address the role that emotional intelligence and a very interesting, I would say, there's no other way to put it, a test of sorts to see where you fit in the emotional intelligence spectrum. It's called a DISC, and I'm familiar with DISC from years ago, but this is not my conversation. It's your guy. So first I want to welcome Brett. Please say hi.
Hello, Ike. Glad to be here.
And Evans. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the book and how it causes more powerful relationships in a work environment that lead to greater productivity and greater effectiveness?
Okay, so I'll start a little bit. And we took a look at this from a couple of different perspectives, but the big way is emotional intelligence has been out there for like 30 years, but we all know that we need to develop it. We've all probably heard the research about the fact that it's much more important than our intellectual intelligence or our skills. It's really what's going to drive our success. But a lot of people still struggle at how do we actually make that happen for ourselves? How do we actually make that go on a day-to-day basis and increase our emotional intelligence so that we will be more successful? So we wrote this book based upon our 20 years of experience working with emotional intelligence. And one of the things that we find is a really helpful piece is if we can language around emotions and how we apply those. That's where people really struggle. Emotional intelligence psychology today talks about the fact that we need to be able to understand, identify, and manage our own emotions and the emotions of others, which is easier said than done. So what we've done is we've married a couple of really important concepts here, emotional intelligence and a personality profile called DISC, that is about patterns that we see and patterns that we live each and every day.
That was the term, personality profile, not psychological test.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying.
Not a problem. It's a personality profile. There's no right or wrong style. There's just there's styles. And actually, Ike, I'm gonna call this back to you because the people problem is actually the first guideline you have in your work. The people problem is actually that we view people coming from different perspectives as wrong, not just as different. And we are all different. So it really goes to seeking the truth. It's just because I believe it's true, that doesn't make it true. It just makes it true for me.
There you go.
And when I'm talking with somebody else, their truth is a little bit different. And the better I can understand those differences, the better I can adapt to those differences, the more successful we're going to be. And that's really where we went with our book. And it's really where we've gone with our clients and seen huge success in their ability to really improve their outcomes.
I have to ask the question of questions, and that is, can you please give us a brief overview of what emotional intelligence is?
Yeah, absolutely. So emotional intelligence is really, and you nailed this on one of your earlier podcasts, Ike. It's about understanding your emotions and understanding other people's emotions and being able to manage those things.
Very good.
In the book, Solving the People Problem, we've actually created a framework to help people with this. Building on what Evans was telling you, again, with emotional intelligence being over 30 years in the marketplace, I think the great thing about the history of emotional intelligence has been it has brought awareness to the fact that we need to better understand our emotions, both our own emotions and the emotions of other people. But where it hasn't gone far enough, and what we are attempting to do with this book and with all the work that we do, is give people that specific language that they can use. So when they say, once they realize that the data says, hey, I'm going to be more successful if I can increase my emotional intelligence, when they make the decision to say, okay, I want to do that, so how do I do that? That's what we bring to the table here.
Excellent.
It's a much more practical way to look at emotional intelligence, to say, okay, I now have a language. I can actually do something about it.
Well, one of the things that this really portrayed to me is something that I've been sharing with clients and audiences for a long time, and that's meet people at their model of the universe.
Yeah.
We constantly are attempting to get people to adjust and move to our channel because, of course, we have what's important to say, and get them to really, I would say, understand rather than be clear. And I'm finding out, if you can find out on what channel someone receives and processes information most clearly and deliver that information to them on that channel, the chance for actual communication just goes up exponentially. And that to me is what I see your efforts helping people do, learning to help people meet others at their model of the universe without it sounding too extraterrestrial.
No, it's spot on. It's funny. Once we got the invite to join you on this, like, I was thrilled because really I'm a lifelong sales guy. I go back to Tom Hopkins days.
Me too.
So I went to a Tom Hopkins.
He was good.
Oh, he was,
wasn't
great. He was great.
The porcupine.
Yeah, and I went to a Tom Hopkins boot camp in Las Vegas when I was a financial advisor right out of undergrad, and 1,000 people, and I actually got the opportunity to get up on stage with Tom Hopkins. And I won the darn thing.
Good for you.
I got the darn one. But so I was a big fan of Tommy Hopkins and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that he talked about was be a chameleon, right? He always said, hey, as you're working with your customers, be a chameleon and, kind of follow what they do. If they lean forward, you kind of lean forward. If they are speaking fast, well, up your pace, up your tempo. If they're slowing down, lower your tempo. And honestly, without even knowing it, that's largely the application of DISC EQ to sales. In the book, we talk about the idea of being a chameleon as a first step. But the problem with the old version of just be a chameleon is it can come across as inauthentic as mimicry, potentially. Yeah. What DISC EQ allows you to do is have that chameleon kind of property, but do it in a very authentic way because you have a better understanding of what your style is and what your communication strengths as well as weaknesses are, as well as how does the other person like to communicate? Yeah. And that's really what this is about. It's about communication.
And as I see this, the ability to, as you said, to be inauthentic is fairly easy if you're going in there saying, well, I'm going to do what they do. I'm going to be what they be, rather than meeting them at their model of the universe, which I'm saying over and over again. But to be able to actually look and hear and feel the way someone is and not be a counterweight to that person, be in sympathy as well as empathy, so that you're doing a dance. I always tell people, go to a restaurant if there is such a place anymore, and watch people sitting at different tables and see which ones are doing the dance and which ones are sitting apart and are mismatching. And you can tell when you get this type of relationship based on two people being in sync. And I think that's what you were going for. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much so. Yeah.
So tell us about the DISC portion of the DISC EQ.
Sure. So DISC is not new. It's actually been around for a long time. Like you mentioned, you've seen it in the past, but it's gotten a lot stronger. It's been built. It's had a lot of people studying it, a lot of people refining it, a lot of people making that model really, really honed in for helping us really understand one another. So DIS and C are four basic different styles, if you will, and they're based upon some observable behavior. So the D and the I style, standing for dominance and influence, those tend to be people who are a little bit faster paced, a little bit more push their points. And then the S and the C style tend to be a little bit more calm and reserved in how they go about things. Brett and I are actually different styles on this right off the bat. Brett is up in that high I quadrant up in the ID area, right at the top of that model. I'm not. I'm actually down in the S quadrant, a little bit calmer, a little bit more reserved. We joke all the time. I'm the CEO. He's the president. We joke all the time. He is a talk it through leader. I honestly believe, from my perspective, he starts sentences not knowing where they're going to end. I tend to think things through and then come up with my ideas.
Partners,
but it works perfectly because we bring different strengths to the table. That's the real value of this, right? So the D and the C actually share much more of they kind of tend to be skeptical. They're a little bit more challenging. And the I and the S style tend to be much more accepting and warm of new ideas, new people. So if you see, the whole population fits in there, and each of the quadrants has roughly a quarter of the population with a lot of variation there. But there tend to be some behaviors that you can identify that will tend to help you understand where are people in relation to where you are most naturally comfortable. And DIS and C, it's not about just labeling kind of where they are from that perspective. It's understanding how they're a little bit different and how I can flex myself, being authentically me, but having the interest that you talk about in your guidelines, the interest in the other party, enough to say, I'll come out of my comfort zone a little bit to make our communication work more smoothly.
So I'm such a high D that I get a nosebleed. And I'm curious, when you come across someone who is a high D and you are there attempting to market or sell something to someone who's a high D, and this is a driver, it's a not necessarily I'm going to dominate you, but it's probably unspoken. So I'm curious, what could you share for our listeners that would say, here's an example of what you would do with a D?
And in fact, I'll tell you, if the D, the I, the S, and the C personality types have different priorities and different buying kind of signals and practices. So to your point, the D is going to be more fast-paced, kind of results-driven. Most people who are Ds, if they are the buyer, they're going to want competency and they're going to want fast action. So if you're a salesperson and you're talking to a D, you want to move it along and show them how this is going to help them. If you're working with an I type, they're also going to want that fast action, but they're going to care more about the relationship. So you want to spend some time building that rapport, building that relationship, potentially talking about personal issues. Look at the family pictures and things like that. If you move down into that C category, they're still going to like that personality or that relationship. They're going to have that personal connection with you, but they're also going to be focused really on dependability. Are you going to be there for me? And then on the C, they want that dependability. They want accountability, but they also want to make sure that you are competent. So you need to come with them with facts and data around how your product or service is going to hit the mark.
Interesting.
And actually, in our book, In Solving the People Problem, we have a whole bunch of stories. So as we were putting this together, we went out to all of our LinkedIn friends and our clients, and we said, hey, tell us your stories about Disc EQ. And I have a really short story that I'd actually like to read for your audience, because I think this kind of will hit what you're talking about, show you how can you put this to use. So this is from Andy. Andy is a sales professional in the real estate world. So this is what he says. He says, as a real estate sales professional, I love using DISC to connect with my clients. Being able to adapt my sales approach has undoubtedly increased my revenue. If I have a really people-focused I-style client, I show them the hosting space and the crowd-friendly amenities first in the property. Likewise, if I have a more systematic, analytical, precise C style of a person, I show them the warranties, the efficiencies, the maintenance record before we even tour the property. My Disc EQ gives me the insight I need to read my customers. And that's something that I think is really important as a salesperson, right? You got to read your customers. So he says, Disc EQ gives me the insight I need to read my customers, and more importantly, develop strategies on how to adapt my style to build more effective working relationships.
Yep, that's it.
So there you go.
That's it. And plus, I was reading the very first story hit me about Sierra and the fact that when I read that, I kind of knew where it was going instinctively. And what I saw in that was a perfect example of what is referred to as the Peter principle. Now, how often do you find that when someone gets elevated in their position, such as Sierra did, that the Peter principle ends up, and for those of you who aren't aware, the Peter principle is being promoted to a point of not incompetence, but you're a great salesman, so they make you a sales manager. And you're not a sales manager, you're a great salesman. How do you help your clients get past their own internal dialogue about, well, I've never been a leader. I've been really good at X. How am I going to get these people to do what I'm doing? I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I remember reading about the Peter principle, and I think a big part of it ties into that EQ conversation. Frequently, we rise in an organization, and what we don't have is we don't have the emotional intelligence yet for what we need to do in that new role. And there's a decision that people make. So I'm going to get myself in trouble with my family right now.
Okay.
My father-in-law was an engineer, and he was a great engineer. And he had exactly that. He was promoted to become a manager of engineers later in his career. And we were around the dinner table. I'm not even sure if we were married yet. And he said out loud, not trying to be funny at all, he said, this management job would be great if it weren't for those people I had to deal with. He was still an engineer. He hadn't kind of made that transition. At the same time, I'll go to that first story in the book. Sierra, she hit a new role that she didn't yet have that competency to, but one of the beautiful things about emotional intelligence is, unlike IQ, emotional intelligence is exceptionally malleable. We can get much better at that. Sierra is a huge success in that role because when she ran into that problem, she didn't duck and cover. She said, wait a minute, there's new things I need to learn to be successful here now. So she took on that kind of DISC and EQ and said, let me understand these people a little bit differently because the way I'm talking isn't the way they need to hear it. And I go all the way back. When I was an undergrad, I had a communications professor who said, communication is not what you say, it's what they hear.
The meaning of your communication is the response that you get.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think there's that Peter principle. And if we look at most organizations where they really need help, it's people who have grown not necessarily to a place where their technical skills aren't good enough. It's a place where their emotional intelligence, their communication skills are actually now they've become a limitation. And if they go at that from a fearful perspective, they tend to lock down on here's what I used to do well, so I'm going to do more of that. And that's not going to solve the problem. So emotional intelligence and DISC EQ gives us an opportunity to actually see it in a new light, to step up in a new light, to gain the skills that will actually take us much further in our career and get much better results for our organizations.
Excellent. How much time or attention do you spend on having people find out what communications modality their counterpart has? Like, are they an auditory? Are they a visual? Are they a kinesthetic? And are your words mirroring that, quote, reality? Is that something you get into?
It is. And I would say that with how much time do people need to dedicate to this stuff? It's the kind of thing that you can learn very quickly. Mm-hmm. It takes a lifetime to master. It's never ending because after all, we're dealing with people. We're dealing with understanding your own self and your own emotions and the emotions of others. And that's a pretty complex kind of a topic.
So it isn't just, oh, well, I'm going to learn this today and use it tomorrow. I mean,
unfortunately, it's not. And in fact, it's funny in my history, my career, and Evan's career, we've been to a lot of different workshops that other people have put on, around personality styles and things like that. And far too many people treat this as it's a workshop. Come learn this thing. Now you got it done, move on. And what our point, really the idea around writing the book and around all the work that we do and the different tools that we provide for folks, it's around how do you learn this stuff, but then continue to build and grow and put it to work. I mentioned, my background is in sales. I've been a sales guy for over 20 years. And I would argue that the most powerful tool that I have in my entire kit is my ability to sit with somebody and start to understand, okay, how do they like to communicate? And then I adjust my style.
You know what they call that, don't you? There's a technical term for it. It's called listening.
There you go. I learned a long time ago. We got 2 of these ears. We got 1 of these mouth. Yeah. Let's use them in that ratio.
I sometimes hesitate to do this, but it just gives people an idea of just how inefficient human beings are as listeners. I used to use the OK sign, but that's no longer usable. So I can now use a victory sign. And if you guys would play along with me, I'd love it. If you'd put up your fingers like this, and then I'd like you to place both tips on your chin. Good. Brett did what I said. Evans, you did what you saw.
Yep. I was listening. You were watching.
There you go. And it's not meant to be an I got you. It's meant to show that we listen with so many senses that we have to be careful about the input we receive in terms of, is what I'm hearing really what's being said? And so I want to caution in the lightest of terms, anybody who goes into this and attempts to go, well, I've got it, I'm hearing them. When in doubt, lay out and listen. And that's really all that I can suggest.
Yeah. Ike, we actually have an opportunity for your audience, anybody who wants to get a little bit deeper and kind of understand where do they fall on this whole DISC EQ model. What's their current state? How well do they understand their style? How well do they understand other people's styles? And are they applying that? On the website for the book, which is solvingthepeopleproblem.com.
Thank you.
If you go to solvingthepeopleproblem.com, look for the link that says, what's my DISC EQ? You click that what's my DISC EQ and you get into a questionnaire that really is a measurement of your current state of emotional intelligence. It will give you a score in those 4 categories of, do I know my style? Do I apply it? Do I know other people's style? And do I apply it? And it will give you a personalized report at no matter where you are in each one of those 4 categories, whether it's high, medium, or low. Here are a few things that you can do right now to improve your ability in each one of those 4 areas.
Okay, let's talk about improving ability as it relates to emotional intelligence. If there were 1, maybe 2 tidbits that were the most valuable bits of information you could share to someone regarding raising their raising their emotional intelligence or their emotional quotient, share them with us.
Sure. This could become a really long conversation. So let me go with just a couple of really simple ones.
3 minutes for a long. No.
Yeah. The biggest thing on this for me, for a lot of people, is actually developing some better self-awareness. When things happen that they did not expect, to actually step back and do, I started out in the military, do an after-action review, if you will. What didn't go right in there, and how did I potentially contribute to that? Why was my message not heard? Why did somebody take offense at something I said? To start to understand how I'm coming across. Because as much as we have those 4 M's, know my style, know other styles, and then choose my actions and adapt my behavior for mutual benefit, that first one is really critical. If I don't know my style, it's really hard to do well in the others. So that self-reflection, and there are always going to be opportunities for this. I still do this. If we have a meeting or I meet with a client and something doesn't feel right, a little bit of reflection. how did I come across? Is there something I did that contributed to that discomfort? Is there something I did that made that not work as well? What can I be a little bit more careful of? So that constant ability to better understand ourselves and how we're coming across, that's kind of the key. And we're in such a busy life, it's so easy not to take that time. So that would be kind of my number one place is you really got to start there.
And I'm looking forward to a second one, but I know that when I learned how to sell, even though I believe we've all been selling our entire life, especially even getting a cookie from mommy, that in the early days, because of Tom Hopkins, because of Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, because of all of that, that's the way I thought to sell. And I was very good at it, but I never felt really comfortable. It was always shower time when I came home, and I couldn't understand why. And I realized that I was playing a salesperson, that the authenticity factor wasn't there. And because I was good at it, I was able to close deals. But when I decided to put together this system, I took all of that I felt that I was doing ineffectively, instead of walking out and saying, yeah, that guy was a jerk, to be able to say, I take responsibility for the breakdown in communication. To me, that was a jump in emotional intelligence. How do you coach people to be more self-aware?
So I just want to comment that everything you were just talking about, all those techniques that were in the Tom Hawkins and then the Glenn Glarigan Ross, they were exactly that. They were inauthentic techniques. And what we've grown into is a philosophy around being a more consultative salesperson, right? I mean, you nail it with your guidelines around being interested in the other person rather than being interested. What I find is that many of those techniques that are in some of the old school sales sales guidance, you still might do some similar things, but you do it for a very different purpose, right? It's about being effective with your communication. It's about being authentic in that. So the idea around being more self-aware, it's first looking at that idea around, are you interested in the situation? Are you interested in others rather than trying to be interesting? So that idea around being very self-aware, take a look at, look in the mirror, be a fly on the wall, so to speak, when you're having your sales interactions, and think about, hey, how am I coming across here? Because if you can think about how the other person is perceiving you, you're going to have a whole lot better opportunity to improve what you do to be more effective to other people.
Yeah, I know one of the things I frequently say to the people that I'm working with is, if you would like different results, the only tool you have to change that is your own behavior. You can't change the results by hoping that other person will change. So I tend to push pretty hard on people about what am I going to change to make this better? Because that's really the only avenue I have to actually take where we are now and actually improve those results going forward.
What type of resistance do you come up against with people who are, I'm going to come up with a genius term here, resistant?
So one of the things that I'll say, we had that solving the people problem questionnaire. But another thing that we found has really been a breakthrough for people is actually taking them through a full DISC assessment and actually having them see that. And one of the things that I found is really shocking to people. I told you these instruments have changed a lot over the last almost 100 years that since the DISC philosophy was kind of found, is they get their report, and I cannot tell you the number of people who were resistant to participating.
It's not me. That's not me.
Who got the report and said, who's been following me for the last 2 weeks? Because this is feeling uncomfortably close.
Right on.
But there are two things here that are wrong, and they'll talk to people they know, and the people will say, no, that's you.
Interesting.
Like, so that there's something there that I'm not seeing. But those tools have been they're so valid and reliable now, especially the one that we're using, which uses computer adaptive testing. So as you're going
and that's available also on the website?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to invite all of you to take advantage of this profile. If you're just getting started, even if you're, been in the business as long as I have, it's something that will be enlightening because of what you just heard. You look at it and you go, oh, that's what I'm doing. So the DISC, if you can get that on this website, I invite you to take advantage of that and follow the teachings here that will be in your best interest. And one of the things that I've learned really deeply, and I'm curious how you respond to this, is that most individuals have not learned anything new since they finished their formal education. They haven't learned how to play a guitar. They haven't learned a foreign language. They haven't learned anything. What makes this different for people to say, oh, I'm going to take this on and make this something I'm going to learn and practice?
One of the things that I think makes this really different is that it's about them. When Evans just talked about the DISC assessment, the actual profile that you can get at solvingthepeopleproblem.com, they get that report, and as they read it, they are learning about themselves. There is literally a report that is repeating back to them, this is how the world sees you. And because the tool that we use does use that computerized adaptive testing, and it's validated, it's reliable. It's not just, hey, let me ask you a couple of questions and give you some generic things. It's very, very specific. People, when they read that, they see, oh my gosh, this is me. And because it's so accurate in what it's telling you about yourself, that then follows, because later in the report, it tells you, okay, here's how different people of different styles see you, and here's how you can be more effective. And because right at the second page where it tells you this is who you are, when people agree with that, then the reason that we've been successful with people, taking this to learn it further, why they decide to take this on rather than picking up a guitar and learning a guitar, is that they recognize that this is about them, and this can have a direct impact on all of their relationships in their lives, not just their sales interactions, but their teamwork interactions. They take this stuff home. You're going to be a better wife or a better husband or a better partner. You'll be a better parent. It really is something.
I guess that's the answer to how does one increase their emotional intelligence.
It really is.
Is find out what you're all about and respond to it effectively. Gosh, I could go on with this conversation for hours, and we may have to do this again. But what I'd like you to do in our last few minutes here is once again give your website, tell them what they can get. If there's one other thing that you'd like to share, I would love to hear it, and I know our listeners would too. So who wants to go first?
Fantastic. I'll go ahead and take that, Ike. So Solving the People Problem is the website. The book is the same name, Solving the People Problem. The book itself is available on Amazon. But if you go to solvingthepeopleproblem.com, you can get a couple of things there, actually. You can click on the What's My DISC EQ link, and you'll get a free questionnaire to give you an idea of how well do you know your style and how well do you know other people's styles, and are you applying that language? It kind of gives you a foundation with some tips. If you want to take it that much further and you really want to take that DISC assessment and really learn about yourself, just click the link that says, what's my DISC style? And that will take you where you need to go. And Evans and I can be reached right through the website. So solvingthepeopleproblem.com, you click on contact us and you're going to reach us.
Excellent. Evans, anything in closing?
Well, I would say one of the things that I would share, Brett mentioned there's a whole bunch of stories in this book. One of the things that we're asking for is if people have stories, if they've applied it, if they've seen some benefit, we'd love to hear those stories. I don't know if that's a second book or if that's stories that we could share on the website, because they may help somebody else who's running through some of those same challenges. But we want to kind of keep this out there, help people understand that DISC, even if I took it sometime in the past, there's a lot more that can be gained from that. It can really help you fundamentally
It sounds like it's
change
changed
your
a
life.
lot since when I did it in 1988.
Yes, it has a little bit, Ike.
Well, even I've changed a little bit since 19. On behalf of all of our Close the Deal Without Selling listeners, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come here with us. And I want to once again just implore is too heavy a word, but suggest highly that you not only go to the website, but you take advantage of all of the tools that these gentlemen have made available for you. When you look at what you and I have been working on and how to be genuine and authentic, know thyself. I forget if it was Goethe or somebody said, know thyself. If I knew myself, I'd never stop running away. But in this case, know thyself and stay put and really take what has been shared with you, not only in the book, but in this conversation to heart. Gentlemen, I wish you the best, and maybe we'll cook up something new that we can talk to the listeners about and have another session.
Sounds great. Thanks, Ike.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ike. Wonderful time.